they're a database company at their core, of course, but then they've also really emerged in enterprise SaaS. They're a leader in cloud ERP, and that's still very true today, but it's just amazing how OCI has become such a huge part of their business. They entered the infrastructure as a service market with all its challenges, and then really made some big changes with Gen 2 OCI. And I believe most customers, if not all, are on Gen 2 now. And so it's just amazing how they've pivoted into that space, and now they're the fourth major hyperscaler, right? And they're also partnering with those other three hyperscalers.
Welcome to TBR Talks, decoding strategies and ecosystems of the globe's top tech firms, where we talk business model disruption in the broad technology ecosystem, from management consultancies to systems integrators, hyperscalers to independent software vendors, telecom operators to network and infrastructure vendors, and chip manufacturers to value-added resellers. We'll be answering some of the key intelligence questions we've heard from executives and business unit leaders among the leading professional IT services and telecom vendors. I'm Patrick Heffernan, Principal Analyst, and today we'll be talking about Oracle with Katie Merrill, Senior Analyst for TBR's Cloud Practice. Katie, thanks for coming in. I know you've done some travel this fall, and one of those events that we haven't caught up on yet was Oracle. So tell me a little bit about the event, where it was, how big it was, any kind of big announcements that they did, and maybe anything that you took away that maybe you were surprised about Oracle that you didn't know going in.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Patrick. So I attended Oracle's Cloud World event in Las Vegas in the middle of September. Really great event. A lot of people, I think most people on the ground and those who tracked the event would pretty much agree that the biggest announcement they made was their partnership with AWS. I wouldn't say I was surprised about that because they had already partnered with Azure and GCP, so it was kind of a question of when, not if, they were going to do this with AWS. And I should say what they're doing, which is they're bringing their database services to AWS infrastructure. And that's actually a very big deal because I've been covering Oracle for quite a bit now, and that's just a huge transition from the Oracle I used to cover, in that they're partnering with their biggest competitors to make this transition for customers. But when you think about it, it makes a ton of strategic and financial sense. And I should call it too in what they're actually doing, the way that they've architected this. So they're actually physically taking Oracle's Exadata hardware and actually putting it in AWS data centers. And that's important because it's delivering a fully integrated service, so the customers are still getting the native AWS and GCP and Azure experience that they're used to. So that's an important piece. Financially, it's obviously highly attractive to customers that are huge Oracle database customers, but that also have really big footprints with AWS, Azure, or GCP. So I think we'll see this drive a lot of healthy migration activity, and I think we'll see it come into play with the Gen AI decision makers as well, because it's effectively bringing the enterprise data closer to these popular developer tools that AWS and GCP and Azure all offer. So I think we'll see customers kind of view this as a way to accelerate their migrations, and I do think we'll see that kind of reflected in Oracle's top line.
So it's interesting, you mentioned you've covered Oracle for a long time, and when you talk about them changing their alliance relationships and becoming partners with their former, but clearly now still in some ways competitors, is that, in your view, is that change in their ecosystem approach driven by changes in the market that they had to respond to, or sort of strategic decisions on their part to say, we want Oracle to play differently across the ecosystem?
I think it's a change that they kind of had to make, and in hindsight, they could have made it a few years ago, because the reality is these customers are big Oracle database customers, but they're also obviously huge AWS and Azure and GCP customers. I think they finally accepted that, customers are multi-cloud. They are running on multiple clouds. And so that's just a reality that they ultimately had to accept. And from Oracle's perspective, as long as they're paying Oracle for the database, then they're all good with that. So I think the feedback just from a lot of people is like, this is a really, really smart move. And if you look across the hyperscalers as well, just think about the total addressable market opportunity that is up for grabs across these big three. And I should mention Oracle themselves. I think a lot of customers will still go to OCI anyway.
Right.
They might not opt to go to AWS, and that's great for Oracle too. So yeah, there's a huge incremental revenue opportunity up for grabs across Azure, AWS, and GCP, which makes for a really interesting dynamic as well.
So a little bit of a curveball question, but the way you just talked about multi-cloud environments and the way that clients or customers have gone to that sort of just it's evolved that way. You've been doing this a while. So what is the sort of and multi-cloud was something that people didn't think was going to happen. Like this, it's customers will resist that for all these different reasons. They'll get locked in, they'll have preferences of one or another. And yet it did still happen. Is there something when you look at the broader cloud and software space and you think we're going to change our minds about this in the next few years? Before we thought one thing about multi-cloud, and now we understand that it's a reality and nobody can fight against it. So what is sort of the next thing that we think now, but in 2, 3, 5 years will be like accepted wisdom, like, oh yeah, everybody's got to put up with that?
Well, I think it's important to state the difference too between like multi-cloud and like a truly interconnected cloud. So customers have long been running different workloads. They might have, 10% in GCP, 50 in Azure, whatever it is. It's spread across, but what Oracle's doing is like outlining this vision of having a truly interoperable, interconnected cloud, because it is Oracle Cloud embedded within AWS data centers. So
right.
Trying to make it easier and we've actually talked to customers about that and kind of this vision of having more truly interconnected clouds. And there's particular verticals where that's more important. And so government is really the best example. So I think that's a trend we'll continue to see. And I think it's really interesting how Oracle is kind of leading that charge. And they can do it because of database and because they've made this big move to actually partner with their competitors.
So that's perfect segue into my last question, which is around where Oracle is going next. So you just called them a leader, practically visionary in terms of where cloud is going. So where do you see that? Where do you see Oracle in 5 years?
Yeah, I think this multi-cloud strategy kind of gives us a glimpse of where they're going. I do think it kind of asserts them maybe indirectly within the ecosystem more, but there's a lot of other compelling parts of their portfolio that open up those opportunities, and one of them is analytics. So if you look at the way they've crafted their analytics stack, it's built on OCI, which is the same infrastructure that their Fusion applications are on. And those Fusion applications have all the ERP data, et cetera, that feeds the analytics stack. So it's really a full end-to-end narrative that Oracle can go to market with. And one of the announcements at the event as well was the general availability of their integration with Salesforce. So it's this, again, kind of a vision of more interconnection and now making it easier for customers to run their Fusion data against their non-Fusion data. So that was an example as well of how you see Oracle kind of moving more or trying to solidify itself more into the cloud ecosystem as well. So I'll be looking out for more if they make similar moves and kind of expand those partnerships, not just with Salesforce, but perhaps others. And then I'll also be looking for how this database strategy really does fuel into the top line. And we're talking to customers coming up here, and so we'll get more sentiment into how they view what Oracle's doing. So yeah, that's what I'll be looking for.
It is really surprising to think about Oracle as a company that plays nicely in the ecosystem. And of course, I mean that in the nicest possible way. But it's true, right? That's not the way that company has been for decades.
It's not. It's a huge shift. And what's interesting too is like they really are they're a database company at their core, of course, but then they've also really merged in enterprise SaaS. They're a leader in cloud ERP, and that's still very true today. But it's just amazing how OCI has become such a huge part of their business. They entered the infrastructure as a service market with all its challenges, and then really made some big changes with Gen 2 OCI. And I believe most customers, if not all, are on Gen 2 now. And so it's just amazing how they've pivoted into that space. And now they're the fourth major hyperscaler, right? And they're also partnering with those other 3 hyperscalers. So it is I'm not saying there's not challenges that exist, but it is you have to give them credit on that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, they've certainly adjusted to the market that was in some ways maybe forced upon them by their clients, but then also by just the competitive ecosystem that they were playing in.
Yeah, and I'll be looking too for how partners adapt on the OCI side. So they're used to working with Oracle really on the SaaS side, but
Right.
now you see OCI becoming such a huge part of their business, but OCI comes with a new set of challenges. So it'll be interesting to see how they work with their partners to adjust them on the infrastructure side.
Right. Right. It never gets boring. One last question I have to ask is you mentioned that the event was in Vegas. I know that we went to an event together in Boston last week. I'm not sure where else you traveled to this year, but given the choice in 2025, where would you like to go for events? What's the top of your list? And what's from either you've been there before, you want to go back, or would be cool because other people have gone for events there? And I know Vegas is at the bottom of your list, but is there anything else down there at the bottom?
I don't know if there's any other at the bottom. I've been to Vegas for events like this so many times throughout my career, so I'm just very used to it. I did go to an event in San Francisco in June for Databricks, and that was a good one. And then East Coast, Boston, New York is always convenient for me. So
Yeah. No desire to go to Texas for an event then?
no.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. And
Excellent.
abroad. I'll always go abroad.
Of course. Excellent. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Tune in next week for another episode of TBR Talks. Don't forget to send us your key intelligence questions on business strategy, ecosystems, and management consulting through the form in the show notes below. Visit tbri.com to learn how we help tech companies large and small answer these questions with the research, data, and analysis my guests bring to this conversation every week. Once again, I'm your host, Patrick Heffernan, Principal Analyst at TBR. Thanks for joining us, and see you next week.